What if you found out that your spouse only had 6 months left to live? Welcome to the Legacy of Love podcast, where we explore how to both live and leave a legacy of love. I'm your host, Sarah Eckline, the founder of Trust and Honor and a private fiduciary based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today's conversation is really a powerful one. Grab a box of tissues. I'm joined by Amy Shaw, and she is the founder of Walk the Red and wrote a book that I encourage you to pick up called Navigating Goodbye. Her story is just devastating. She lost her husband to brain cancer while raising 10 children, 6 with special needs. In this episode, you'll learn how to navigate grief with more openness and radical acceptance, the importance of including our children in difficult conversations, and how we discuss and talk about death is a reflection of our life. If you're a parent, caregiver, or just someone planning for the future, you won't want to miss this conversation. It's a powerful one. Amy Shaw, welcome to the Legacy of Love podcast. I'm really happy you're here with me.
I am too. We're twins at heart. Look at us, both red shirts.
Yeah, those tuning on from YouTube, yeah, we're wearing matching red. I mean, how could I not wear red, knowing you and the name of your company, Walk the Red, everything that you're about? I knew you had to come on the podcast and speak with me. We'll definitely touch upon your book, but before we dive into all of that, I mean, we have to start with kind of where things started for you, of doing the work that you're doing, of writing books, of speaking. I mean, talk about legacy.
Yeah. Well, to back up a little bit, my husband and I, we were married for 24 and a half years. And in that time, we had this dream of building a large family. So over 14 years, we had 10 children. And that is
Oh,
usually really, really overwhelming to people. But the secret is that we had in the first nine years, we had 6 pregnancies. And if you think about this, it's very confusing. I had 6 pregnancies. I lost 3 babies, but I had 4 living children. So it's like blah, 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 blah. But in short, I lost a twin, but then I gave birth to the other twin. And then I lost an early first trimester baby. And then sadly, very, very tragically, we lost a baby right before birth, full term. And so through those losses, well, number one, I was like, I can't keep doing this. This is really emotionally killing me. But we recognized that we were a family who had lost children and that there were children in the world who had lost their families. And it seemed like such a beautiful match. And so we actually, it was my husband's idea. And we adopted from Africa and from China. And so in the next 5 years, in a 5 year period, we brought home 6 children internationally. And they were with all these different special needs. So we had wheelchairs and uh, so many surgeries and hearing aids. And I have a child who can't speak, so we were doing sign language. And we have 2 with arthrogryposis, which is one of them. I'm constantly caregiving because she's unable to get dressed and to use the restroom and feed herself. And it's intense. It's an intense life, but we really felt called to it. It was this amazing blessing of a family, and we were so overjoyed to be able to be entrusted with these lives. And then very suddenly, my husband, who had never taken a sick day in our entire marriage, came home one morning at like 9:30. I was like, why are you here? And he's like, I don't feel good. I'm going to bed. And I was like, what? That's so weird. And I had preschoolers who were going to get on the bus at 12:30, so I let him sleep. And about 3 hours later, I got them on the bus and I came and I woke him up and I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he could not make a sentence that made any sense. He was word searching, he was fumbling, he was very, very frustrated. He was aware that he couldn't make sense. And he kept trying and he was holding his head. He was in so much pain. And I would walk out of the room and just I would actually go to the bathroom and look in the mirror and go like, "What is happening? What in the world? What in the world?" And so I'd go back in and try again and it was the same thing. And I told him like, "Knock it off." He was a really funny guy, but this was not the kind of joke he would ever do. And so he finally stood up and he put his hands on my shoulders and he tried to say, "Amy, listen to me." But instead he called me by our daughter's name. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." So I called 911. They came, they assessed him. They thought at first a stroke, ruled out a stroke. They took him in. And he was a medical kind of guy. He had a degree in biology. He was so interested in everything. And so he absolutely knew what a blood pressure cuff was. But when they did his blood pressure in our bedroom, he was staring at that thing like he'd never seen it. And he was like, "What is that? How does that work?" I mean, like his language was rust, he was able to answer the questions about his name and about who was president and those kind of things. And so he was so fascinated by this blood pressure cuff. And they would explain it to him. And then he would ask the question fresh, like he hadn't just asked it. And I was like, "What in the world is happening?" So they took him off to the ER. By the time I got there, because they wouldn't let me ride with him, the doctor pulled me aside. He said, "Amy, your husband has a mass in his brain and we're transferring him to a bigger hospital." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what?" I mean, this is my husband who has always been healthy. Like I said, never taken a day off work. He was never one to take medication. He got up every morning and worked out. It was so out of the blue. And we had a pastor who came to the hospital who absolutely shifted things for me. And he told me because we had made this, well, I guess I made the decision to tell my children and get them out of school so that they could be there. And the pastor said to me, he said, "Amy, your children will always remember this day. How you present it to them, you have basically, I have the power to positively influence the story and the narrative that's going to be replayed in my kids' minds. What it did for me is it gave me this bird's eye view of the story that I was living in, the story that I didn't know how it was going to go, but it gave me that like kind of wake up call to say, "Okay, I am not just going through this. I am a guide for my children. And so I want to do this in a way that helps them the most." And so I think that very early wake up call, I'm not really sure what to call it, but really helped guide me in that. But I'm going to tell you that I was overwhelmed. I was shocked. I was blindsided. I was underwater. I don't know, all the things that you can think. I was those things. But then I had to like tell the kids, like, "Yeah, this is kind of what happened. We don't know. Daddy's going to go to the bigger hospital and I'm going to go and so is going to be with you." And then, he had an emergency brain surgery and the surgeon came out and said it was grade 4. And I was like, "What is grade 4? What does that mean?" And it was actually worse than what he had predicted. He had thought it was grade 3, but it was grade 4. And I was like, "Well, how do you know?" He's like, "Well, I do this all the time. I take out brain tumors all the time. And when they are that soupy like it was, that's grade 4. And that means that it's all through his brain and it's 100% terminal and he's going to die." And it just, we broke. Actually, I'm not even sure who was there that took a picture of us, but we have a picture from the top of all of us holding hands and just clinging to one another and just writhing in pain. And I'm not sure how many days later, my husband had to have the staples removed from his head because he had this craniotomy. And so I went with him. Well, obviously, I had to drive him. And it was that oncologist that told us, "Oh, and I see here that the DNA of his tumor is this." And that's actually the worst possible kind that you can have because it's going to resist all the treatment that's out there. There is not a cure for glioblastoma, and he had the worst possible kind. And he said, if you choose to do nothing, you have 3 to 4 months. If you choose to try treatment, you may get 6, maybe up to 12 months. And it just, the overwhelm, the sadness, the horror, the shock, the all of that was so deeply, deeply felt. But there was this something in me, this little voice that rose up. And I remember we left that doctor's office. I can see us walking out of the hallway, walking into the parking lot. You don't remember every doctor's office that you ever go to, but I remember that one. And we were holding hands. And by the time we got to the car, I said, okay, Brian, we're going to make this the best 6 to 12 months of our lives. That's it. That's what we're doing.
It was really just a flip of the switch for
It
you.
really was. It really was. And that's not to say that we didn't grieve, grieve, grieve. We absolutely did. I didn't even know it had a name, anticipatory grief. I didn't know that there was a name for that because, I'd only heard about people grieving after someone's death. So here I have my amazing husband, and we have this glorious family, and we're given this news, and we were sad, but he was there. So then I felt guilty. Finally, someone named it for me and said, oh, this is anticipatory grief, when you anticipate something that you're losing and it's real. I'm like, oh, thank you. So that was really helpful.
I mean, boy, your life, I think you're just a testament of, right, making space and just almost just I can feel it in your energy of just breaking open, but just being so enwrapped in love. And what you were just speaking to of like that light switch,
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much of, I think, the power of your story, of your testament, of the work that you're doing. We all have that choice, right? And it can be a really hard one to make. Even in your story that shows through, it seems like you're very connected to your spiritual life. You're a Christian. I'm assuming there's a community around you. Do you want to speak to that anymore? Because I
Yeah.
think that that's probably, I mean, I'm like, God, how do you have 10 children and then going through this?
Right, right. Yeah, I think, that was definitely the community was definitely part of how we made it. And I think also the take that we had, because we do have a life built on faith. And I had actually pulled the kids aside and I said, kids, we have a holy privilege. We have a holy privilege to walk Daddy down the red carpet to the door of eternity. That's where Walk the Red got its name. We're walking down the red carpet. We're escorting Daddy as far as we can go, all the way up to the door of eternity. And then he's going to go through that door of death and he's going to start his eternal life. And so the best thing that we can do as a family is, if we put ourselves in Daddy's shoes, he's going to worry about, how can I protect my family when I'm not there? How can I provide for my family when I'm not there? So the best thing we can do is show him that we're going to be okay. And we're going to do that because we know that God has us. We have a history of God rescuing us over and over and over. And we don't know how, but we have faith that it will and that God will. And so that's our anchor, and we're going to do this. And so, what we did in our family culture, and COVID came along, and so we were all home, and we would have a quiet time together where we were reading the Bible together and we were talking about things. We talked about hard things with our kids, and our kids were age 18 down to 3 when this happened. And so they were little, and we talked often about what death was. We said the word cancer. We said we don't know what this means. It looks like Daddy's going to go to heaven earlier than we ever thought. And so we talked a lot about heaven. We got excited about heaven. We talked a lot about death being a doorway, and that it actually, this is a great example. We had people delivering meals to us, and the kids were so desperate for people during COVID that a car would pull in, they'd flock to the windows and to the door to look out and see who it was, who it is it. And then when they would see, they would throw the door open, they would run through the door, and they had to keep their 6 feet. But they were so, so, so excited. And I said to them, you guys, which one of you, were any of you afraid to run through the door? Who was afraid to run through the door? Nobody thought about it because you were so focused on what was on the other side. You were so excited to get there, to see those people. That is what death is. Death is merely a doorway. It is separating this life from that life. That life is going to be way better. And my oldest was in the car with my husband at some point, and my husband admitted to her, he said, "You know what? I'm really excited. I can't wait to go to heaven. I am really excited." And I love that. I mean, he is still my very, very best friend. I hate that I have no access to him right now. But you know what? This is temporary. Death is a temporary situation. And I'm going there too. And I can't wait. But that's where I have this really clear understanding of my life. And I don't know how long I get. My husband got 47 years. I don't know how long I have. And so I just feel so, I wouldn't say that I'm morbid in any way. I love life. I love color. I love happy. I love joy. And I want to impact the world as much as I can before my time is up, because I get all the good stuff. So I am happy to serve other people. I am happy to take care of my kids. I'm happy to do all those things now because I get everything later. And then there's just such joy in serving. But I think the attitude towards death is so in America, we don't want to talk about death. In fact, there's like the top three things that you don't want to talk about. You don't want to talk about how much money someone's making. You don't want to talk about how much sex someone's having or not having. And of course, you don't want to talk about the fact that you're going to die. That's like dead last, right? It's dead last. Nobody talks about that. But, and this is what I told you, I think you're going to like the statistic.
Tell me, I want to hear
Okay.
it.
Sarah, Americans, the percentage of Americans that have serious conversations about death is only 5%.
Oh, really?
5%. And probably
Oh,
in the
I'm
line of work
shocked.
that you're in, that really surprises you. But as a
Yeah.
general population, only 5% of Americans have actual conversations about what they want to have done, as opposed to in
Wow.
Bhutan, over in
Wow.
Asia, it's part of their spiritual practice to think about death. They think about death 5 times a day, but it's in a
Mm,
mode of gratitude. And they have
mm.
this understanding. And then this is the clincher of this, is that Bhutan is among the happiest nations in the world.
It does not surprise me at all. I mean, that's been so much of my own personal journey and professional journey of like, I mean, death, it's like you can't talk about death and not talk about life.
Yeah.
I say that death is the ultimate truth serum because it
Hmm.
just pushes away all the busyness, right? And then
Yeah.
brings in, each of our, like that unique life force that we each carry. And for me,
Right.
it's just brought my life, my purpose into full focus.
Hmm.
And I, of course, see that with you. I mean, there's no way with all the grief and loss that you've gone through, it connects you to that life. And it is such a privilege and gratitude. So I love that.
And
Wow.
small little life or plug for life insurance. If my husband did not have life insurance, I would not be doing the work I'm doing. With 10 children, if he did not have life insurance, I would probably be working 3 jobs. I'd probably be sick because I'd be so stressed out trying to keep it all together, trying to keep these kids going to places. I don't know how I would do it. So I am forever grateful for that. Yeah,
Well, in the back
forever.
of my mind, I actually was wondering, I was like, I hope that he had life insurance. Did he?
Yes,
So you
he
answered that
did.
burning nosy fiduciary question.
Yes. And I just, I told my financial planner, like, it's because of you that I am able to stand on these stages and be a public speaker and bring awareness to this, and that I can come alongside families and help other people. So, somebody told me, well, Amy, you should go sell life insurance. I'm like, I don't really want to. But I would be more than happy to speak at it to them to say, "Hey, this is so 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 important." In fact, that is one thing I did after Brian's death was I was just to my some of my relatives and my close friends like just pulling them aside and say, "Do you have life insurance?" Cuz nobody knows. And if Brian had not had it or I think we even had term insurance. It was just these little tiny term insurance plans because that's what we could afford. But even if that had lapsed, and I needed to restart it the day after the diagnosis, we wouldn't have gotten it. So that's why I'm always telling my friends, like, please get life insurance, please. You just don't know. You just don't know. So
And how did you manage tending to, your husband's needs and also your special needs children and also yourself and just not breaking down?
well, I did break down and I broke down regularly. But I think because we had lost children before and because we had been through these cycles of how to grieve, how not to grieve, my husband tried stuffing the death of our son that we held and we buried this tiny little casket. His reaction was, I'm just going to go back to work. I'm just going to be busy. And you know what? It imploded and he really struggled. So we learned some like principles in this. And so I always have always taught my children tears are your ally. Tears are your partner to wash your soul. Let them come. It's like a fresh start. It's like a reset button. Like, you need to unplug your stupid printer. I have a stupid printer that's brand new and it still won't print. So you unplug it and you give it a little second, and then you replug it. That's kind of what tears are. And I think the other thing that made it more doable was that we made a choice to tell our children. We told them from the get go, as I said, but some families think I'm going to protect my children, and it's done from a heart of love and good intention. However, it backfires because the kids feel robbed of the time that they didn't know, and they want that respect. Yeah, we all want to be respected as human beings, whether you're 10 or you're a 25-year-old. I wanted to know that my mom was sick. You didn't tell me, kind of thing. And it hasn't gone smoothly for families that have chosen to do that. So I do try to share that news. And I'm not saying here's my way is the best way, but it worked really.
I think that more that we're really facing that truth, that reality coming, that allows us to go through the whole emotional journey.
Mhm.
And I think, what stays with me with your story is like really coming to a place of acceptance. I mean, you can't turn that page if you're resisting that reality. And you really came to that acceptance. That's what I see, that kind of light switch moment coming on for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And boy, is that powerful. Even with my, like thinking about my upbringing and my family culture, of course, it's no surprise. I think that, I grew up in the 90s and that's most of the culture. It still is today, I guess, now that we know that 5%.
Mhm.
But yeah, my parents definitely sheltered me from letting me know, just even thinking about when our animals died. Like
Mm.
I found out after the fact, and I remember being
Interesting.
really upset about that. I've
Yeah.
I've actually always wondered, like, I wonder if that's why I lean so much into death now as an adult,
Hmm.
because, my parents definitely took the approach of like trying to protect me and
That's so interesting because what my parents did was we
Mhm.
would go to like my great grandmother's funeral, and then as my grandparents began passing, we went to the funeral. They were always open casket, and my parents would take us up there and make us touch the body. Like, that
Wow.
is so crazy to me. But you know what that did? They always said, feel his or her hand. Do you want to
Mhm.
touch their cheek? Like, no, not really. But, but realizing they felt waxy, they were ice cold, they were hard as a rock, they were so totally different. And that really helped show. And my parents were always saying, like, this is their shell. They are not there anymore. And I think that that did, I haven't thought about that at least in a long time until you said that, Sarah, about the pets. That was a very unpleasant part. But what it did for me to see, okay, this is a cycle, and where it gets hard is when it's out of order, right? When you're burying your child and you're burying your husband, that's additionally hard. But, even in my own process, like when my husband took his last breath, I threw my arms up in the air and I said, "He made it. He made it," because I was so focused on where he was headed. Because the moment of him laying there in the bed that last week, that was so not fun. And I didn't want to mentally in my heart live there. I wanted to, where's he going? Where's he headed? What's his reality now? Somebody asked me, they didn't know I was a widow, and they said, "What does your husband do?" I'm like, "Oh, he's quite busy. He's singing nonstop." I'm like, "Really?" Yes, he never stops.
I'm glad you have a sense of humor.
uh, I couldn't do life with my set of circumstances without humor.
Okay, but as we wrap up our conversation, we touched upon kind of legacy so much in this
Yeah.
podcast. What I say, in the message to my listeners is really our legacy is not just what we leave, it's how we live.
Yeah.
And I feel
Amen.
that, that's so much of your work and your message.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to hear, now, after your husband's passed, right? You're still
Mhm.
raising 10 children. Oh my gosh. I'm just still, what?
Only
I
six
mean,
of them are at home, Sarah.
oh, only six.
Only six. This is a cakewalk.
But do you have like daily practice, or is there, maybe it's not a daily practice, but like a practice that really connects you
Mm.
to kind of this, right? This, what I call like this intentional living, this living your legacy, right?
Yeah.
Not just only
Yeah.
future focused. And of
Right.
course that's an important piece, but this living it.
Yeah.
What is your
Yeah.
practice, or what wisdom can you share for us?
Well, I feel like I could go so many different directions with this. On a real practical, honest answer, I'm thinking about this app I have on my phone that keeps me accountable, that I love to check off every day. And I make sure that I hug each of my kids every day. I make sure that I am praying every day. I make sure that I am reading for personal growth every day. I'm listening to some kind of growth podcast or something every day. I'm also working out every day because that's something I just posted on my Instagram about this today. My body is my currency for the world. And when my body is done, my chance of seizing opportunities to impact the world is over. I mean, I suppose, my books and, recordings and stuff continue on, but the day-to-day interactions that I can have with people, they're over when my body quits. And so I really feel like it's important. I try to eat a vegetable every day, like an extra vegetable. Like my daughter's gotten me into this where we're eating these long carrots, like one long carrot a day. So, I mean, like silly little things like this, but I try to do it every day and I go and I mark it off and I like, okay, did I have my extra fruit every day? And I'm trying to walk 10,000 steps and I'm trying to, do different things in my business every day, trying to stay on top. Of course, you fall off the wagon like everybody, but I think, prayer is my secret for sure. And tapping into the divine strength. And I would love to share a tiny little story that I think will be powerful. My daughter, my oldest daughter is getting married next month, and this is so exciting. But if we back up into 2021, my husband passed in April of 2021, and somewhere in January, we were sitting crying together. It was a common scene. And we were up in my bedroom with just a couple of my older kids, and we were just weeping together and hugging and talking about death, talking how we didn't like it. Um, and my husband said, "You guys, I'll do anything you need. I'll do anything you need that will make it easier for you." And that's when Jency spoke up and she said she had been thinking about this but didn't know how to say it. And so she took that opportunity. She said, "Dad, will you walk us girls down the aisle. And so he did. And so in February, he rented a tux. We got, my mom, I was married in the 90s. You were growing up in the 90s. I was married in the 90s, and we sealed my wedding gown in this like really cool box, and we opened it and I put it back on. I could fit in it. I put it back on. We have a video of him seeing me again in the dress and him hugging me, and my daughter wore my wedding dress, and he walked her down the aisle in my dress. And then my next daughter wore my mom's wedding gown. And then our younger little girls wore white dresses. They all had veils. I mean, my youngest daughter was 5 years old. He walked them down the aisle. His tumor was over, and all of that mess that was happening in his brain was over his speech center. And they kept saying there's going to be a time where he won't speak. But he had all the words. He prayed for husbands for these girls. He prayed for their future marriages. It's all recorded. And so my daughter next month gets to have that video played at her wedding. Oh. Precious stuff. That's the kind of legacy that my husband left, among other many, many things. He left us letters that he never told me he was leaving. He wrote us letters that I found after his death. It was just precious. So he did an awesome job of leaving a legacy. Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that.
I thought maybe you would want to hear that.
Oh, it's your first daughter getting married?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. There's not going to be a dry eye. I'm already crying. So, gosh, blessings to you and your family. You're just absolutely gorgeous. You did not disappoint. Before, as we wrap up, anything you want to leave listeners with?
Yeah, I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. And I have a free gift for you. If you go to my website, walkthered.com, I have a free downloadable 15 habits of legacy leaving families that you can have, that some of them are real easy, that you can knock off 5 of them in the first day. Some of them are more like things that you want to put into place for regular life, but come and get that and start using it, because we don't know how much time we have. But life is a gift, and it's precious, and it can be so amazing, even with hardship.
Thank you. That, of course, will be in the show notes for listeners. And just, Amy, I'm sending you a big virtual hug. Thank you for being here today. And
thank you for having me.
We'll have to come back again.
That sounds great. Thank you for being an amazing host.
Thank you for joining me for today's conversation with Amy Shaw. I hope the conversation showed you what's possible, even in the midst of heartbreak. The 3 key takeaways from today's conversation: 1, grief and gratitude can coexist. 2, including our children in difficult conversations is such an act of love and can really help their grieving journey. And last but not least, how we talk about death or don't shapes how we live and how we're remembered. If today's conversation moved you, please leave us a rating and review. It really helps people find the show and allows us to have more conversations like this one. And until next time, remember, your legacy isn't just what you leave, it's how you live. As we wrap up today, a quick reminder: the Legacy of Love podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing shared in this podcast should be considered legal, financial, tax, or professional advice. Use of this information from this podcast without careful analysis and personalized review by your attorney, CPA, or financial advisor may cause serious adverse consequences. I provide no warranty considering the appropriateness or legal sufficiency of this information as to any individual's tax, estate, or related planning. The opinions and perspectives expressed are my own or those of my guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization I'm affiliated with, including Trust and Honor. Any references to third-party content are for convenience only and do not constitute my endorsement. For legal guidance specific to your unique situation, consult with a licensed attorney in your local state. To learn more about the services I offer, visit trustandhonor.co.